조금씩 좀 우리가 전문가로서 얘기를 좀 듣고 오늘 토크는 마무리를 해야 됩니다.
Okay, well, I'm pleased to speak with everyone today, and I'm sure Mie has told you a bit about my past, of what I do. I'm a specialist of Middle Eastern art at Christie's Auction House. I live in Dubai, and I have a passion for understanding cultures, and I had thought early that it was just going to be Middle East, but I feel I'm really interested in understanding Korean culture, and it's very new to me, but I'm very open-minded, and I am very true when I speak with people, whether it's artists, whether it's art historians, or just, you know, everyone here. I'm very eager to learn about the history. I have been in Dubai for 3 years. I'm fully American, and I have decided to focus on Emirati art, which is the local population of the Emirates. And I had a Fulbright scholarship to live in Dubai, and I focus much of my time researching the local indigenous people there and how they have tried to preserve their tradition within the wake of whether it's the Western people coming through and kind of understand and affecting whether it's the education or you know, just the aesthetics of how it would. It was interesting for me to come to Korea and to experience the different artists, and I kind of right away went into the Dansekwa artist that I feel is really interesting for me to see in the 1970s, but even beforehand to research other artists that had traveled to Paris in, let's say, the 1950s, and they were interested in Cubism and different works, and of course the abstract expressionist movement in the US and how that's affected their work. So it's something that's really interesting for me to look into. I wrote a few artists that I really found inspiration on. I met Han Chung-hyun. I met him in Kukche Gallery, which was really exciting. So I had a chance to meet him and talk a bit about his work, which was really nice to see the experimentation that they do within the material, in which he burns the work, and so it's really interesting for me, as well as Nam Chun-mo. So I'm really interested in learning about that artist and the idea of the use of geometrics within their work, and how, which is very similar in a way to Arab art. You don't see much of, there are figurative works that you will see, but they have this very close attention to abstraction, geometric, within their works, which you will see, and so that was another one. And of course, I really love Chung Kwon-young. He's a really famous, for me, very touching artist, and there's this use of paper making, which is something that a lot of Arabs use within their works, and Libe, of course, and the works, and it's just something of using the natural material that I find to gravitate towards. The artists that are using material, everyday found objects, whether it's Ha using the burlap sacks that he found all over, and you find many artists. A really famous Emirati artist is Hassan Sharif. Hassan essentially is one of the most famous contemporary artists, studied originally in Central St. Martin's in London, which was a different school at the time. And he decided to come back and created and used found objects all around. And if you ever go to Dubai, especially during the 80s and 90s, when so many influx of population was coming from all over the world, people were coming in, and it was just producing and generating, whether it was everyday objects and just sharing it. It was a hub, in terms of whether it was linking between Iran and Asia. And so he would just create stacks and mounds of shoes and sandals, and it was really indicative of the time of Dubai itself as this hub for regional trade and what it was. And so he's another artist that I would find is someone that just, it's rooted within the traditions. He's still known as this Emirati artist, but it's a sense of being accepted within the universal canon of art history that I think many of these artists kind of, during these earlier generations, studying in the West, which you find many Korean artists to have done as well, and how they come back and incorporate what they've learned in the West to the country. So it's really interesting for me. And there's actually another artist, Abdullah Sadi, who studied in Kyoto in I think it was the 80s or 90s, and so Abdullah lives in a very very cool environment in the mountains in Sharjah, which is it's a place called actually Madha, and he has this beautiful like Japanese-inspired studio space that I had the chance to visit, and he collected so many objects and cans from Japan and hung them in kind of these ready-made material. So in terms of artists that were directly inspired by Asian, especially Japanese culture, that was definitely one of them. And but most of, I mean, the Korean art history, modern art history, happened much before UAE. United Arab Emirates was founded in 1971, so during that time they created these nation-state building projects, the art societies, and the artist collectives kind of came after that. But you have, because I'm a specialist in modern, in Christie's and modern art, most of the art that we sell is Iraqi, Syrian, Egyptian. So those artists had the pleasure of studying in Rome and in Paris and London in the 40s and 50s and 60s. So those are the artists that I find are, you know, those are the strong part of our Christie's sales. And then the same way, before unfortunately, there was much war happening in Syria, in Iraq, revolutions upthrown in Iraq. They came back and incorporated what they learned from all these different European countries into their respective countries. And so at a time, unfortunately, before all these wars happened and most of these Arabs fled, there was this sense of artist collective that, of course, that I see has existed in Korea. But you know, it's a very interesting two cultures for me to look into and to understand the differences. But I do find this strong passion to preserve the traditions and heritage, albeit if the material, if they're trying to do it conceptually, I'm very much interested in that. So it's a pleasure to be here, and I'm very honored to have the chance to talk with you all, and I hope this allows you a chance to understand a bit more about the art history that I know, and you know, it's the crossroads, you know, between I think Europe is, you know, looking into the Middle East, and there's much similarities in terms of, I think, preserving traditions and trying to incorporate, you know, universal art historical narratives in the art compositions that I find is very similar. I find though in Korea it's much more advanced in terms of many more modern practicing artists. Unfortunately in the UAE there's only a few modern artists, and it is because there's really 3 generations of artists living today, and because the society's changed dramatically from, let's say, you know, pre-1971, and then oil was founded like around the 1960s, and once this commercial oil boom happened, you have this sweet spot between, like, let's say the early 1980s and 90s, which was when the artist collectives were formed. And then unfortunately, which, you know, is just, you know, you have new galleries coming in, auction houses, they really drove the commercial economy within UAE, and it started to lose, unfortunately, artists started to drift into different directions, and they lost the sense of artist collective that started from the ground up, which was unfortunate. And because Emiratis are only 10% of the UAE population, there's a strong movement to try and preserve, you know, if you ask me, they're doing it now. You know, now there's many more programs because you have people that are around my age coming back from these universities in the West who are curating, who are artists, who are doing these programs that the royal family has offered to study in, let's say, Rhode Island School of Design. A lot of them are studying in London and Goldsmiths, different curating programs, and they're coming back and doing phenomenal work. So it's only time to tell as to, you know, how this documentation can be preserved and promoted abroad, and that's exactly what I'm doing. So I have an interest and passion to interview artists. So it's, as I said, I'm just very happy to be here, and I hope it's not my last time to Busan. I'm very proud to say my first trip to Korea was in Busan and not Seoul. So it's beautiful. It's a beautiful city, and you know, speaking to someone at Art Busan, he was working directing the fair. He was so happy and trying to create Busan as a place to come and to understand what Busan has to offer, and not just what the international arts community has to offer. It's more of learning about the culture and history, which I think is really great to walk around the fair and to see Korean artists and to see the history that has been preserved in promoting Korean art. So I'm really grateful to be here and to learn about it. Thank you.